Did you know that Marriott partners with a few dozen global airlines and allows you to transfer your Bonvoy points to miles with these airlines? You also have the option to earn miles instead of Bonvoy points when you stay with Marriott. But the math works out better if you earn Marriott points as usual during your stays and transfer them later to the airlines if you want to. In this video, I'm going to go over some of the airline partners and talk about the rates you get when you transfer. And we'll look at some scenarios when it might make sense to transfer your points to airline partners. So, first, let's take a look at the list of airlines that Marriott partners with. I'm just going to read over them really quickly, and it's probably a good chance that you're not familiar with a lot of these programs. But you can transfer to Aegean, Aer Lingus, Aeromexico, Air Canada's Aeroplan program, Air China, Air France and KLM through the Flying Blue program, Air New Zealand, Alaska, ANA, American Airlines, Asiana, Avianca, British Airways, Cathay Pacific, China Southern, Copa Airlines, Delta, Emirates, Etihad, Frontier, Hainan Airlines, Hawaiian, Iberia Plus, Intermiles, Japan Airlines, LATAM, Lufthansa, Qatar, Qantas, Saudi, Singapore Airlines, Southwest, TAP Air Portugal, Thai Airways, Turkish Airlines, United, Virgin Atlantic, and the Vueling Club. Now, looking at that list, you probably see a lot of airlines you're familiar with and use, and might think to yourself it would make sense to transfer some points to Delta or United or Southwest. Well, not so fast. I'm not saying it won't make sense for you to transfer to these airlines, but there is a twist. Marriott Bonvoy points transfer to almost all of these airlines at a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 Bonvoy points for 1 airline mile. Additionally, most airlines give you 5,000 bonus miles if you transfer 60,000 points, so you end up with 25,000 miles per 60,000 Bonvoy points. There are a few exceptions to these numbers. United gives you 10,000 bonus miles per 60,000 transferred for a total of 30,000 miles. Delta, Avianca, and American don't give you transfer bonuses, so you just get the 20,000 miles if you transferred 60,000 Bonvoy points. And lastly, Air New Zealand transfers at a 200-to-1 ratio instead of 3-to-1, with 75 miles as a transfer bonus. Okay, so with that 3-to-1 transfer ratio in mind, now you may be wondering why you would bother with this at all. It's pretty easy to earn Delta, United, or Southwest miles with credit cards you can get in the United States. And if you have transferable currencies like American Express membership rewards, Chase Ultimate rewards, Capital One miles, or Citi Thank You points, you have access to a lot of these miles programs just by transferring those currencies at a 1-to-1 ratio to the airline programs themselves. So there are a lot of great programs that are on this list that you can get through those other transferable currencies, like the Air Canada Aeroplan program, Flying Blue, which is Air France and KLM, ANA Mileage Club, that's only American Express, but still a great program, British Airways through the Avios program, which a lot of other airlines use as well, Singapore Air. A lot of these are great programs that you can transfer from, again, multiple partners within the United States at a 1-to-1 ratio. So despite what may seem a poor value proposition, there are situations where transferring from Marriott makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to go through those now. But before we do that, if you watch this channel, you know that we do a lot of videos on the Marriott program. I'll link them in the description below if you want to learn more about the Bonvoy program. One of our recent videos talked about how much Marriott points are worth, at least in our eyes. Knowing what your Marriott points are worth to you can help you decide if it's worth converting them to airline miles, so I'd invite you to check that video out. Also, if you find this helpful and enjoy content like this, we'd love it if you'd like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. Now let's look at some reasons why it may be worthwhile to transfer Bonvoy points to airlines. There's nothing more frustrating than finding a great flight redemption but coming up short of the miles you need to book it. When that happens, it's nice to have options to top off your points so you have enough to book the ticket you're looking for. We've already talked a little about transferable currencies from Chase, Amex, and other issuers, but you can use Marriott Bonvoy points as another kind of transferable currency in this situation. Having more options is always better, and even at the 2.4 to 1 effective ratio, if you transfer 60,000 points, it may be worth it to transfer Marriott points and book that ticket. Also, it may make sense to transfer Marriott points to airline miles to avoid stranding miles that could expire. Let me explain what I mean. Many international airlines have programs where miles can still expire, and unlike most or all of our US programs, several of them have no way to extend expiration dates on miles. My wife and I each had around 20,000 KrisFlyer miles from Singapore Airlines from a round the world trip we did a couple of years ago. All of our paid long haul flights were on Singapore, and we flew some shorter flights with them as well, and earned a lot of miles. While planning a trip for this summer, we found a business class redemption from Brisbane, Australia to Singapore. It wasn't available to book with miles through any partner programs, but there were 2 seats available through the KrisFlyer program itself. So we transferred some miles from our transferable currency programs and were able to get those seats and also use those miles, which would have otherwise expired in another year and a half or so. Now, in this case, we did not use Marriott points for the transfer, but we could have. And anytime you take a paid flight, you can credit the miles earned either to the airline you're flying or to one of its partners. If you credit it to the airline itself, you may earn more miles or get other benefits like free Wi Fi on Singapore. And that could leave you with miles that may eventually expire with several different programs. I always recommend researching the best place to credit your miles for any flight on an airline you normally don't use, but this gives you an option to make sure those miles don't go to waste. In our case, Singapore miles are easy to get through transferring from Amex, Chase, Capital One, and Citi, but what if you fly an airline that doesn't have transferable partners, like American Airlines? Marriott has several transfer partners that are not otherwise available to transfer to. In the United States, neither American nor Alaska are transfer partners of the major credit card issuers, although Alaska is a partner with Bilt, and there is currently a way to get them from Hawaiian Airlines, which is a transfer partner of American Express, though probably not for long. Both Alaska and American have credit cards in the United States, so there are ways to earn these miles through credit card spend as well as flying. Still, if you don't value Marriott points highly, but still use the brand for hotel stays, this may be a good way to get value out of your Bonvoy points. And on that note, Marriott Bonvoy points can be used to transfer to several international programs that have no US transfer partners and have little or no other ways to earn miles in the United States. There are several of these, and I'm sure they all have their sweet spots. But I want to look at a couple examples and why I think they're especially valuable potential transfer partners for Marriott. The first is Japan Airlines, or JAL. Japan Airlines is a member of One World Alliance and is one of the 2 major carriers in Japan. You can book Japan Airlines tickets through its One World partners, Alaska, American, Cathay Pacific, British Airways, and more, but it can be difficult to find availability. Transferring direct to Japan Airlines gives you more options to book their flights, and they can have good redemptions for other partners as well, both One World and other partners outside of their alliance. If you're looking for business or first class redemptions with Japan Airlines, you'll likely have to explore all options, including booking directly with the airline. Japan Airlines isn't a transfer partner of any of the major credit card currencies in the United States. Now, JAL does actually have a U.S. credit card through the First National Bank of Omaha, but it only earns 1 point per dollar on everything except Japan Airlines purchases, where it earns 2 points per dollar. Still not great. So even if you had that credit card and earned JAL Mileage Bank points directly, they would expire in 3 years. Even with the transfer ratio the way it is, You could potentially earn JAL points faster with another credit card by transferring through Marriott. We'll look at the math on that in a minute. Aegean and Asiana are both Star Alliance airlines and airline partners through Marriott. Now, maybe you have no plans of ever flying these airlines, and so you may wonder why I'm including them. Well, the reason I'm including these two programs is because these airlines programs are two of the best ways to earn Star Alliance Gold status, which gets you all kinds of benefits with all Alliance airlines. I just want to note here that Korean Air is in the process of acquiring Asiana Airlines, and if that ever goes through, it's likely they won't be part of the alliance anymore. Just a heads up. Anyway, Star Alliance is the biggest alliance in the world, and getting gold status can be tough. But having access to awesome lounges all over the world, priority check-in and boarding, and other benefits makes it worth pursuing for many people. By flying Star Alliance Airlines and crediting your flights to one of these programs, you can get Star Alliance status with less effort than it may take with your home airline. The thing is, you'll also earn miles with these flights, and you may find yourself in a situation where you have a bunch of miles with one of these programs, but not enough to actually do anything. This is where Marriott comes in. None of the US credit card issuers have either of these airlines as a transfer partner, but Marriott does. So you can combine the miles you've earned getting status with some of your Marriott points and get enough for a redemption. So, with those examples in mind, the last thing I want to discuss on the subject of transferring Marriott points to airline miles is the idea of using either your Marriott credit cards, Marriott stays, or your transferable currency cards from Amex or Chase to earn valuable airline miles indirectly through the Marriott transfer mechanism. This might not make sense for everyone, and it definitely won't make sense all of the time. But for the right situation, and if you're interested in the right kind of miles, this could be worthwhile. Let's look at some actual numbers to see how this would work. So the first thing we want to look at is how much it actually costs to transfer Marriott points to airlines. As we've talked about, Marriott points transfer to airlines at a 3-to-1 ratio, with 5,000 bonus miles given if you transfer 60,000 points. This means you get 25,000 airline miles for transferring 60,000 points. So if we take the 60,000 Bonvoy points you're transferring and divide that by the 25,000 airline miles you receive, we get 2.4, which means it costs 2.4 Bonvoy points to get one airline mile. So now let's look at how you earn Bonvoy points. Marriott has several credit cards with both Chase and American Express, and most of them earn at least 2 Bonvoy points on every dollar spent. On top of this, there are some good bonus categories out there that give even more points, like 4 points per dollar on restaurants and gas on the Marriott Business Card. The Chase Boundless Card, which is a personal card, gives 3 points per dollar on grocery stores, gas stations, and dining, which for many people is where most of their spend comes from. If you're transferring to one of the airline partners that don't have transfer partners in the US, like Japan Air, these cards can help you earn points relatively quickly, and they won't expire if you don't transfer them to the airline until you need them. As I mentioned earlier, we made a video talking about how to get Marriott status and how credit cards contribute to that. And we also have a video talking about the free night awards that come with these cards. So please check those out if you're interested. They'll be linked below. So when looking at earning Bonvoy points with stays, when staying at a Marriott property, you earn 10 Bonvoy points per dollar, spent at most of Marriott's brands. You earn less at the long-term stay brands, homes and villas, less traditional hotel brands. Depending on your status with Marriott, you can also earn up to 75% bonus points on top of this, meaning if you're titanium or above, you would actually earn 17.5 points per dollar spent, on top of the 6 points per dollar you'd earn if you use your Marriott credit card. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that Marriott will let you choose to earn miles directly with several of their airline partners instead of Bonvoy points on your stays. But because they only give you 1 or 2 miles per dollar spent, you're much better off taking the Bonvoy points and converting them to airline miles if and when you need them. Now, we just talked about booking directly with the hotel and using a Marriott credit card to earn Bonvoy points. In a recent video, we discussed the option of booking direct with Marriott and other brands and compared it to booking using your credit card's travel portal through Amex, Chase, or Capital One. There's a lot of in depth discussion there about points earning and how you can maximize the points you earn from your hotel bookings, so check that out next. For now, let's look at using your Amex or Chase cards to earn points which can then be transferred, first to Marriott and then to an airline partner, and how to maximize your value doing so. You can use your transferable currencies through Chase or American Express to earn airline miles indirectly by transferring to Marriott first, then transferring to the airline of your choice. Both Chase and American Express periodically offer bonuses for transferring to Marriott, sometimes of up to 50% or more. So if you time it right, you could turn your membership rewards points or ultimate rewards points into more airline miles in the program of your choice. If you watch this channel, you've probably heard me say before that I don't generally recommend transferring points from Chase or Amex into the Marriott program. It just doesn't make sense, to me at least, in the context of booking hotel rooms with Bonvoy points, and I think you can often find better uses of MR or UR points. Throw in a transfer bonus like we talked about, however, and it gets more interesting. And if you find a sweet spot with one of Marriott's airline partners, this might be a case where I would make an exception. Let's look at the math. If you took 40,000 points from either Chase or Amex and transferred them to Marriott during a 50% bonus, you would end up with 60,000 Bonvoy points. In turn, if you transfer those points to one of Marriott's airline partners, you'd end up with 25,000 of their miles at a final cost of 1.6 points per airline mile. Considering some of the great spend multipliers Amex and Chase have on their cards, I can see the value in doing this. The Amex Gold gets you 4 points per dollar on groceries and restaurant spend, which in this scenario could eventually become 2.5 Japan Airlines miles, which is more than the 1 mile per dollar you'd earn if you had the Japan Airlines US card. Booking Japan Air tickets on your Amex Platinum would get you over 3 Japan Air miles after going through this process, which is more than the 2 miles per dollar their card would give you, and you'd have the Platinum's travel protections to boot. Now, I'm not claiming this is the best way to use membership rewards or ultimate rewards points. In fact, it may never make sense to do it. But I think it's an interesting option and a very underrated feature of the Bonvoy program. So how do you know if it would be worth transferring to a given airline? Well, assuming you have a use for their miles, I would only transfer to an airline this way if 3 things were true. The first is that the airline isn't a transfer partner of any of the credit card companies you have transferable currency with. Amex, Chase, Citi, Capital One, and Wells Fargo now have transfer partners, some with more partners than others. And they're not all the same either. If you have cards from one or more of these issuers and they have a 1-to-1 transfer rate with the airline of your choice, you're obviously better off transferring directly to the airline, and they have transfer bonuses for lots of these airlines as well. Next is that the airline either doesn't have a credit card available in the United States or has one that doesn't offer enough points on spend to make it worth your while. A lot of international airlines have credit cards in the United States, and some of them have pretty good earning potential. The KLM Air France Flying Blue card, for example, earns at least 1.5 miles per dollar on all spending, and there are many others. Now, we use the Japan Airlines card as an example of a card that doesn't earn as well, but many airlines do have cards that earn better than the 1.6 points per mile transfer ratio would actually give you. And finally, you want to make sure that the value you get from the airline miles is greater than the value you'd get from using those points on a Marriott stay, or for using Amex or Chase points for other things. Now, this is really something you need to decide for yourself. In a previous video, we discussed how much we think Marriott points are worth today, so check that out if you need some guidance or want another opinion on it. If you travel mostly in the domestic United States, you may not find Bonvoy points to be very valuable, so the transfer might make more sense to you. We use our Bonvoy points almost exclusively internationally, where there is often more value to be had. This is a personal judgment call, so just do what makes the most sense for you. And there you have it, another way to use your Marriott Bonvoy points through airline partners. I hope this discussion of times this might be worthwhile was helpful. And if you've ever done this or have some experience with it, please leave it in a comment below. We really appreciate the discussion. Also, if you found this interesting and would like to follow along, please consider liking the video. It helps us decide on which content to make. And while you're at it, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along with us. Thanks for watching.